Meeting of the Transportation and Environment Committee to order. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote? Roll call?
Foley,
Here.
Morales, Esparza,
Here.
Cohen. And Davis.
Here.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Tony Tabor, City Clerk. I saw that Councilor Perales did not get a panelist invite, so he just sent it, so he may be joining a little bit late.
Okay. Well, while we were waiting, since we have quorum, let's go over item B, the review of the work plan. I think we need a motion. Is that correct? I'm seeing a nod from Colleen. So we need a nod to drop the 2 items on the review of the work plan.
I'll move to drop the 2 items on the work. Second.
Thank you. Can we get a vote?
Foley,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the consent calendar, there's 1 item. It's the CEQA mitigation monitoring and reporting semi-annual report.
I'll move approval. Second.
Thank you. We have 1 member of the public who would like to speak. Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy Monday, happy November. Are you going to be able to talk about, can I talk about work plan items at this time too?
The 2 that we just dropped specifically, you
Yeah.
may? Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. To speak about the semi-annual climate smart plan report that you canceled or that you've dropped because of the upcoming study session that's next week, next Monday on climate smart issues. I was very nicely spoken at the charter process last week that the climate smart plan is just one of many ways that we can and we need to be working on the future of green sustainability issues. And, you know, I hope the work plan of the climate smart plan can be made available if a person asks. And so I'll be looking forward to this item next Monday. And thanks for having it. There's climate talks going on right now that it can be interesting if we can start considering more climate ideas and what can work around climate ideas. The Charter Commission process is addressing neighborhood equity, Ohlone issues, affordable housing issues around green sustainability. It's an interesting time, so good luck in our efforts, what we can work towards. I wanted to also ask about the CEQA process and the consent calendar, as this is a report about it. I do not know the depth of the years-long argument of how people are trying to streamline and get rid of CEQA, basically. But I don't think that's necessarily a very good idea. And I think we should really respect what CEQA can try to work for and towards, and just its oversight process in itself. Boy, I think it's really, really important how we need to talk about that and streamline that. Fine, I can understand that, but I just think things are being thrown away, good things, and we're not addressing good things because of these feelings about CEQA and wanting to be more efficient with it when it does a really good service possibly, and look for where it does a really good service, an important service of oversight, and let's learn to practice that and talk about that more. I think is all I can try to help with right now at this time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. CEQA is a state law, so if there are any changes that would be happening, they would happen at the state level. The next caller is 5140.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the environment right now. You guys seem to be obsessed with it, kind of like Prince Charles. Are you guys going to want to take a warlike approach to this? You know, going to have people on the street like SJPD in their riot gear, making sure that you're going to do all the proper things to protect the environment. You know, you're gonna make it so it's gonna be a police state for environmental policies, because that's what's being proposed right now over there with Let's Go Brandon. You know, your dear leader over there,
Chair.
and Prince Charles, and all these other mucky mucks. You guys know what I'm talking about. Come on. This is on
Please
the
stay on
environmental.
topic.
I am on topic. I
This
am
is
on
about
topic.
CEQA.
You guys don't like what I have
Chair,
to
I don't
say.
think certain
If I
language
give
should be
you an
used.
NPR
Thank you. Good point. The next speaker is Tessa Woodmancy.
Okay, good. You hear me? You can hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, sweetie. Okay, good. So, oh, I have to turn my speaker down on this thing. Okay, good. So anyway, we're talking about CEQA. The one thing we were referring to is that the state of California has made it easier to like bypass our CEQA. That was a big thing that, one second, that Governor Newsom was saying is like, oh, okay, we can bypass our CEQA and bypass environmental review because we're building housing. And this is a problem because we need to keep our environmental, going strong as we are, dealing with the, end of life on Earth. We have to not bypass it just for housing. Not to saying housing isn't important, but I think we can do both, and we need to keep doing both, or else we won't have our home, which is, care for our common home is what we need to always be thinking about, and not to bypass the CEQA just so we build housing, and so that's a real issue, and that we need to always be considering environmental impacts in regards to all of our build, because actually we need to be in a degrowth mode. That's how we're going to, our fossil fuel emissions is all about growth. And so when we're growing and saying, oh, we're building housing, but if we're not taking into account the impacts into the environment, we won't have, a life on Earth. So this is what we have to keep doing. And it's always good to have companion, really look at how we're building, because even that's what Catherine Mathewson was saying. We're building very straight boxes, and we really need to make sure we have balconies around everything, and we have rooftop gardens and plants like she did in Singapore, where she really created a wonderful, plant life all over our building.
Next speaker is Andrew Boone.
Yes, thank you, Chair Davis. My name is Andrew Boone, and I was reviewing the report for this item, the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, which regards mitigated negative declarations, meaning that in an environmental review, a full environmental review doesn't have to be conducted for a project because it has only minor environmental impacts. I understand that that's appropriate for many projects, but I was alarmed to see that that's included for the Winchester Ranch housing project. So my understanding is what's happening there is that low income residents are going to be displaced and replaced with higher income residents. So the mobile home park that is there will be replaced with new apartments. So displacing low income people and replacing them with high income people. So first of all, that's a really bad idea. There should always be housing provided for lower income people when they're kicked out of their long-term homes, as in the Winchester Ranch case. And mitigated negative declaration does not seem to be appropriate. There are major impacts when that is done. And I would simply like to see the displacement of low-income residents included as one of those environmental impacts. When people have to move, some of them becoming homeless perhaps, or unhoused, excuse me, that results in environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment that in the case of Winchester Ranch, that's it for our public speakers for the consent calendar. In the case of the Winchester Ranch project, all of the residents were offered a spot at their current rent in the new building. we will now take roll on the consent calendar. And I
Foley,
note that
Aye.
Councilmember Peralez and Cohen are here.
Peralez,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
and Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item D, reports to committee. The first one is the Regional Wastewater Facility Capital Improvement Program. Knapp, would you like to kick it off?
Yep. Thank you, Chair Davis, committee members. Knapp Fukuda, Assistant Director, Environmental Services Department. I'm here today with Norm Mascarenas, Division Manager of Public Works, and David Olson, Division Manager of ESD. Dave, take it away.
Everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so just getting started, I'm David Olson, Division Manager with the Capital Program at the RWF. I'm here to present the semi-annual report covering January through September of 2021. We are the largest capital program at the city, and we are in the 7th year of a 10-year program valued at roughly $1.4 billion. Through the end of June 2021, we had committed nearly $800 million for planning, design, and construction of critical rehabilitation projects at the facility. During this period, we made significant progress in key program areas. Earlier this year, staff finalized the dewatered biosolids management strategy that the City Council approved in June. It consists of off-site disposition contracts, which are anticipated to be advertised before the end of the year, then implementing an on-site fertilizer partner facility, and eventually expanding land application of biosolids on local natural working lands. During this reporting period, staff also completed a program-wide safety review to strengthen our health and safety program with lessons learned and industry best practices. The review found that the safety program is working well, as evidenced by the CIP achieving more than 1 million hours of safe work with no reportable incidents to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Key strengths of the program include routine workplace inspections, effective administration of our under-controlled insurance program, and the strong collaboration between CIP, O&M, and contractor staff. The review did identify a few opportunities for improvements, including clearer communication of safety requirements to on-site personnel and visitors, increased staffing for safety enforcement, and improved infrastructure for pedestrian safety. Based on the review, staff has hired a new health and safety assistant to help with enforcement, installed new safety banners throughout the facility, and improved pedestrian corridors and crossings in construction areas. And finally, in July of 2021, staff completed a process optimization study, which evaluated the facility's liquid treatment processes in a holistic manner to determine potential changes needed to ensure compliance with future regulatory requirements. The study found that the proposed and existing technologies for most of our treatment areas were adequate, except for the secondary treatment process. Because the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board has proposed a 2024 load cap on total inorganic nitrogen, the study recommended implementing a simultaneous nitrification and denitrification technology to meet these current and future permit limits. Advantages of this technology include enhanced nitrogen removal over a smaller footprint and lower energy consumption. As recommended by the study, the staff has initiated a new project which will implement the technology modifications and rehabilitate a limited number of tanks. After the project is completed, process engineering and O&M staff will conduct a technology demonstration to determine the optimal parameters for full implementation of the technology. During this period, we had 23 active projects. This chart shows that we have 20 projects in the design bid build method. The projects highlighted in green are ones that advanced the stage in our project delivery model during this reporting period. The other 3 projects are being delivered using a progressive design build approach. During this period, staff initiated 5 new projects that are now in the scoping or alternative stages. For our flood protection project, staff completed an alternatives analysis and began conceptual design of a proposed berm along the southern and western boundaries of the facility to protect it from riverine flooding. Given the uncertain status of the shoreline project, staff will be evaluating alternatives or additional improvements to protect the plant from the risk of tidal flooding. Also during the summer, the yard piping phase 2 team completed condition assessments of several critical pipes, and design for rehabilitating those large diameter pipes is expected to begin before the end of the year. During this period, we had six projects in design or bid. The facility-wide water project completed field trenching for underground utilities in March, and the designer completed a 30% design in August. City opened bids for the outfall channel project in August, and council just awarded that construction contract last week. Construction will begin in January. The storm drain project is currently out to bid, and award is anticipated early next year. And finally, for the watering project, we completed the 60% design. The design builder also began earlier site work prep and final design in August. And negotiations, the final guaranteed maximum price is ongoing and expected to be completed by December. We also had 9 projects in construction ranging in value between $3 million and $127 million. As you can see on this map, several of those project sites overlap, requiring CIP staff to coordinate carefully all the construction activities to ensure impacts to schedule and costs are minimized. I'd like now to highlight 2 of our larger and more complex projects. The first project is the digester upgrade project, where construction began in 2016. Through September, construction was approximately 98% complete. On this slide in the upper left, the contractor is welding a stainless steel digester gas pipe on top of one of the 4 digesters that are being rehabbed for thermophilic operations. In the lower left is the contractor is connecting stainless steel pipe to the separator tank, which captures the liquid condensate from digester gas before it is fed to the gas compressor building. The photos on the right show the functional testing of sludge screening equipment with water. Ultimately, the bins will be capturing screenings from sludge. This is just a video showing the progress of construction in July. Here you can see the various mechanical equipment on top of digesters 5 through 8 that will support thermophilic digestion. This is the alignment and flow path of the new digester gas pipe rack, where gas is produced in the digesters, is fed to the gas compressor building, and then fed into the new cogeneration facility. In the upper right is the newly rehabilitated dissolved air flotation thickening tanks with new covers for odor control. And finally, this is the new sludge screening building that will screen the primary sludge before it is sent to the thickening tanks. Our Headworks project will replace the aging Headworks 1 with a new Headworks 3 and make improvements to the existing Headworks 2 to ensure operability and reliability. Through September, construction was approximately 43% complete. This slide shows the construction progress of the 3 main components of the new Headworks. On the upper left is where the raw sewage from the collection system is first directed into the screening structure via a new 108-inch pipe. From there, the flow will go through 3 new multi-rake bar screens and then through an 120-inch pipe in the raw sewage pump station in the bottom left. And on the right is the grit removal facility, which is following the pumping. Grit is removed using 6 multi-tray vortex grit units. This slide is just showing the installation of the new 96-inch pipe that will convey the effluent from the new Headworks to the downstream processes at the plant. One of the more complex elements of the construction involved routing this 8-foot diameter pipe beneath numerous utilities and duct banks. It required a shoring system shown in the left photo that was utilized to safely install the pipe while keeping all the surrounding infrastructure intact. The photo on the right shows the same area following backfilling of the new pipe. And finally, here's just a short video showing the progress of the Headworks project in August. In the foreground is the emergency basin overflow structure, which is the connection point for the new Headworks. The large partially paved area on the left is the emergency basin overflow basin, which can be used in the event of peak flow events or power outages. At this point in the construction, all of the large diameter piping connecting the screening, pumping, and grit facilities is mostly buried and has been hydro tested. Work on the upper levels of the structures is ongoing and smaller diameter yard piping is being installed. The 96-inch pipe can be seen exiting off the corner of the grid facility, just as we turn here on sort of the bottom right of the screen. And it's as it makes its way into the heart of the facility. And the taller white building is the new electrical building, which provides power and control for the new facilities. And then finally, just looking ahead through the end of the year, we'll be executing the contract for the outfall project, continuing design on several of our in-flight projects, and opening bids for the storm drain project. And that concludes our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. That digester and thickener project has been quite a long one. I've been hearing about it my entire time in office. It's nice to see it's nearing the end of the project. We'll go to members of the public comment first. The first speaker, before I call on the first speaker, I just want to say, it's important to stick to the topic, and also please avoid insulting anyone in your public comments. I would hope that would go without saying, but apparently I need to say it. First speaker is 5140.
First of all, how dare you lecture me? I insulted nobody, okay? You have no right to lecture me on what is my 2 minutes, okay? And I was on topic, you didn't like it. So for you to lecture me, shame on you. But I'm going to be on topic right now. I want to thank the people down at Wastewater who keep our environment clean versus city council. I'd hate to see if you guys ever had to run the wastewater facility. I could just imagine. It'd be a disaster. Just like the downtown that you guys have. Look at that place, Plywood City. All right? So I called up to thank somebody, Deb. How dare you? How dare the person who lets her dog run at the park when it's illegal to do so? How dare you? How dare you lecture me on what I'm supposed to say? That is disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. I wish I could tell it to your face what I think about you. Matter of fact, someday there'll be a little function. I'm going to show up and I'm going to get in your face and I'm going to tell you to try to make me shut up.
Next speaker is Tessa Woodmancy.
Thank you. Wait, let's see. Did I get the unmute? Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I guess for some reason it wasn't the unmute. Okay, good. Thank you. Well, wastewater, we really need to be creating education in our community of how to live sustainably on our earth. As you can see, this very intense project is absolutely not human scale. I mean, it's beyond almost a comprehension what they're doing with our wastewater, and as well as our solid waste is another whole level of complications. And so basically, when we're dealing with our wastewater, how do we capture our wastewater so we don't lose a lot of our water to become in the wastewater system where it's got to be processed? That we need to be doing that at our local level. Everything needs to become hyper local as we go forward to survive as a species, and that it's these complications and this very fossil fuel enriched systems that I'm sure this wastewater management is using. That's something to think about when we talk about, right now we would be in a transition. So if we're supposed to go to zero, which is what our, the science is saying, well, we do want to keep the fossil fuels to run our waste management system so that we're not wasting our fossil fuels on flying and driving and these type of things when we have these essential services. But eventually we even have to wean off of that because it has to be 100% fossil fuel free for us to survive. And so, we have to be really teaching ourselves and the future generations how to save water, how to, we need to be, water capture and how to clean the water so it can even be drinkable. These are survival instincts that we have to get back to basics. And these are what the city has to be educating us on, is how to survive, have the people survive as we make the mass transitions that we have to make so we can survive.
Thank you. Blair?
Hello, Chair Davis, I believe you unmuted me. Should
Go
I
ahead.
speak now?
Go ahead, Andrew. Yep.
Thank you, Chair Davis. This is Andrew Boone, and I agree wholeheartedly with the previous speaker, Tessa Woodmancy, in that the scale of the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility is determined by how much waste goes into it. And one of the components of that is how we are using fossil fuels and many other materials. So the city and the county should pursue also a program or expand current programs of how do we reduce our waste? How do we reduce the materials we use? We need that to address catastrophic climate change anyway, and it would reduce how much waste gets treated in the end. I'm saying look at the supply, is it the demand side of the problem? I'm not sure how you would say it. The amount of waste going in needs to be less so that we don't have to have expanding the facility and making more expensive, more environmentally damaging processes. The other thing that struck me in the presentation was that a berm is being built to avoid flooding. So sea level rise due to catastrophic climate change will flood the wastewater facility, and not that far into the future, because it's one of the very first places that sea level rise is going to put under the water, because it's almost at sea level. And when that happens, we risk all of the waste just running out into the bay. So a lot more effort needs to be put into reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that we can inspire other cities to avoid sea level rise and drowning our important infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair, welcome back.
Thank you. Hi, my phone is going to something really weird right now. I do not know what. I'm on a different laptop computer now. I wanted to quickly just thank yourselves for this item. It was nice to see the overhead aerial pictures. I know back in 2016 or 17, there was a really good session in using the drone, I think, for a bunch of work at the wastewater facility that I think really people were really happy about. And they talked about at the meeting that it's a real relief to have the use of the drone for these sort of aerial pictures and gets a good perspective on things. So, I'm learning that, there is a science to drone use. I just hope it can be learned to used well and openly, and we can feel safe and trusting to offer practices open and trustingly. So to continue, and what Andrew Boone just mentioned, the wastewater facility can be a really good harbinger, a facilitator to understand the future of sea level rise issues for our area, and the work that they have to do to mitigate sea level rise. So good luck in addressing the sea level rise issues with this wastewater facility and the new better practices that we're trying to learn at this time. And thanks for this item.
Thank you. Turning it back to my colleagues. Are there any questions for staff or comments? I don't see any.
I'll move to accept the.
I'll second.
I'll second.
And let me finish. That's great. We're all on top of it.
I just have, before we take the vote, I just want to ask Knapp or Carrie if you want to address the potential issue of flooding and the wastewater facility being right next to the bay.
Hear me. I'll take a shot at it first, Gary. So yeah, Committee Chair Davis and others in the public. Yeah, we have a number of projects that we have in our books, if you will, to plan for potential sea level, not potential, eventual sea level rise, as well as riverine flooding. We have our outfall channel project, final effluent pump station project, as well as a flood control project. Currently, the scope of that flood control project is just to address riverine flooding. But as David mentioned in his presentation, there's some issues, if you will, going on with the larger shoreline project that the Army Corps and Valley Water are sponsoring. So in anticipation of not quite knowing where that's going to go just yet, our staff is looking to rescope that and look at potential alternatives. If indeed we need to protect the facility ourselves, we can do that. We can have a multi-phase project to address, again, riverine, shoreline, sea level. But that's just for the facility. So obviously there are larger issues going on with shoreline that have an impact on North San Jose and Alviso. And we're working with Valley Water and internally here to see how we can support that project.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Clerk, can we go ahead and have the roll?
Foley,
Aye.
Perales,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
and Davis.
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 2, the Municipal Regional Stormwater National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit Semi-Annual Report. It is quite a mouthful. Rajani.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, and public. My name is Rajani Nair, Deputy Director of Watershed Protection Division in Environmental Services Department. Also joining me is Jeff Sinclair, Senior Environmental Program Manager. Today, we'll be providing the committee and public the latest update on the Municipal Regional Stormwater Permit reissuance from the State Water Board. Next slide, please. So before we begin, we will have a short video courtesy of Santa Clara Valley Urban Runoff Pollution Prevention Program that explains how stormwater runoff contributes to water pollution.
Roads, streets, rooftops, driveways, and sidewalks. We see these every day and probably don't think about how they contribute to water pollution. In natural landscapes, most rainwater soaks into the soil. However, in urban areas, hard surfaces such as driveways, sidewalks, and streets prevent rainwater from soaking into the ground. Rainwater that does not soak into the ground is called stormwater runoff. As stormwater runoff flows over hard surfaces, it can pick up pollutants such as motor oil, metals, pesticides, and litter and carry them into storm drains, which flow directly into local creeks and the San Francisco Bay, causing water pollution.
Thank you. Essentially, the Municipal Regional Stormwater Permit under the Federal Clean Water Act is intended to address water pollution found in stormwater runoff, creeks, and rivers that eventually discharges into what in our case, the San Francisco Bay. The City and Environmental Services Department has the non-discretionary authority to ensure citywide compliance with the permit requirements, both internally with our partner departments and externally with private owners. The current stormwater permit became effective in January 2016 and is typically a 5-year termed permit. However, it was extended. It is now set to expire in June 2022. We shared with the committee and the public that the Water Board released the administrative draft in February 2021, and we identified potential challenges in the upcoming permit, particularly due to limited resources, and the city has yet to see the full social and economic impacts from COVID-19 pandemic. Since September 2010 to 2021, the Water Board has issued the tentative draft order. Now we see more specific language that may be incorporated into the future permit, and Jeff Sinclair will go into more details of the major changes and challenges with implementing the future stormwater permit. Take it away, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Rajani. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Sinclair, Senior Environmental Program Manager. I'm happy to present to you on the stormwater program, stormwater permit. So I'm going to start with the C3 provision, which deals with stormwater runoff from new and redevelopment projects that create or replace impervious surfaces. Overall, the proposed changes in the upcoming permit are highlighted in this table and demonstrate a desire by the Water Board to increase the amount of green stormwater infrastructure. So in the bottom right-hand corner is an example of a green stormwater infrastructure facility called a bioretention facility. And so this treats stormwater runoff through soil and plant filtration. And then above that are some representations of the project sizes shown in the table. The majority of projects are covered currently under a 10,000 square foot threshold. That threshold is being reduced to 5,000 square feet and will include the public right-of-way and trails as part of the project footprint. As seen in the top right corner, there's a red outline around that building. That was an actual project that fell under the 10,000 square foot threshold, but would now be regulated under the next permit. Single-family homes are currently exempt as standalone projects, but under the next permit, homes that are 10,000 square feet in size, those are the roof areas and driveways combined that produce the runoff, those would be regulated and required to put these types of bioretention facilities in. You can see the type of size in the picture on the right. Roadway projects are currently regulated, but maintenance is not. In the next permit, they're proposing for significant reconstruction or maintenance of roadways that are contiguous and an acre in size and basically disturb the roadway down all the way to the base rock below the different layers of asphalt. These specific projects would be required to include green stormwater infrastructure. And as you can see, the footprint outlined in green would be an example size of a project, but not an actual project. Under the current permit, we developed a GSI plan to help guide us through implementation of green stormwater infrastructure. And in the next permit, they want to see implementation as demonstrated by these new requirements. Specifically, they're going to require 10 acres be treated by GSI, which will be met by the city's green stormwater infrastructure regional project, the first one in the county that will treat over 200 acres and will be located at the River Oaks pump station. Provision C10 deals with trash load reduction through the storm drain system. Under the current permit, we had a requirement to meet 80% reduction. And when I talk about 80% or the percentages, it's from the storm drain itself. So it's not necessarily representative of what's in the creek. We accomplished that and exceeded it through implementation of large trash capture devices, the most in the Bay Area, as well as inlet screens,
or maybe there are two IDs or something.
Can
and
we
additional.
make sure everybody else is muted? Thank you. Sorry, Jeff.
No problem. Additional online programs such as anti-litter, public litter cans, and other online cleanups have helped get us towards our goals. In addition to our in-creek efforts that serve a great purpose of getting the community out there and cleaning up our creeks through a direct discharge program, which just deals with discharges from unhoused communities and illegal dumping, as well as additional creek cleanups and source control bans, such as banning single-use plastics and polystyrenes. Those made up a 35% total credit, and the tentative order proposes to remove that, leaving us that 35% deficit to reach our 90% goal and 100% target by 2023 and 2025, respectively. In addition, we reported this past June these full trash capture requirements would apply to private properties. At that time, the threshold was for properties that were 10,000 square feet or larger. However, the tentative order removed that threshold, and it now applies to all properties that connect directly into our storm sewer system. As reported this past June, this would disproportionately affect our areas in the 3 lowest medium household income ranges, as shown on the map. Provision C12 deals with PCBs. PCBs exist in unhealthy and toxic quantities in the bay and are of particular importance to the Water Board. As such, we are required to implement control measures to address them. And in the next permit, they're proposing approximately 300 acres in San Jose of old industrial areas that may have PCBs to be addressed through green stormwater infrastructure, large trash capture, street sweeping, or other methods. However, the assumption is that these areas contribute moderate to high levels of PCBs, but that may or may not be the case. And in the map on the right, you'll see the green areas are old industrial areas, whereas the pink areas are actually known areas to have moderate to high PCBs. Our intent is to have the Water Board focus on just those areas of known PCB levels. PCBs and demolition will also have increased requirements. Currently, there's a self-certification process through building applications, and in the next permit, applicants will be required to notify the Water Board, EPA, and the city prior to demolishing a building. The city will be required to inspect demolition projects, as well as confirm that PCB-laden material was disposed of properly. Similar types of requirements will be applied to reconstruction of bridges and overpasses. However, the specific guidelines have yet to be developed and will be by Caltrans during the next permit term. Finally, source properties are those properties that we know to have legacy PCBs due to their operations or just from when they were operated in the past. And so we will be required to coordinate with those properties and the Water Board to ensure that those sites are abated. Finally, there are two new requirements in the next permit proposed, and one is related to cost reporting for capital O&M and staff time related to implementing the stormwater permit. However, the level of detail is yet to be determined, and we will be working with the Water Board to develop a framework that will include the methodology, expectations, and the guidance for that cost reporting. In addition, the Water Board, as well as other government agencies, have had particular concern over the discharges that result from people living outside and along the creeks. And so they want us to track and report homeless data, take actions to address the homelessness, and also report on our interdepartmental coordination. While the efforts to address homelessness are important, this particular provision doesn't necessarily offer solutions to the problem and results primarily in an administrative burden to staff. And so we suggest focusing these reporting requirements to water quality items and distributing it throughout the rest of the permit.
Thanks, Jeff. So right now, the city is in the process of providing comments to the Water Board. And at a high level, what we're going to focus these comments are essentially to align and provide additional time to comply with the permit terms by 2027, prioritize provisions in the permit that will provide greater impact to water quality, and last, eliminate administrative burdens so staff have more time to address water quality issues. Below on the slide shows the current schedule for the stormwater permit reissuance. Right now, staff have collected comments from our partner departments and will work with some city departments such as Office of Economic Development to inform our private owners. All comments are due to the Water Board by November 16, 2021. There will be one more opportunity to provide comments in February 2022, but it's going to be a very brief window. So right now, Water Board is anticipating that the permit will be effective by July 1st, 2022. And this concludes our presentation, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the public first. Tessa Woodmancy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, that's a big list of things, I mean, that he was addressing, and they both were addressing. And I was just looking up PCBs to understand that, you know, and one of the things I found out is it comes from electrical equipment, like our transmission line, our transformers, a lot of that technology. And that's where, and I'm not sure about this, but if we well, I know for sure that we need to localize our solar, our electrical installation needs to become hyper local, that we need to, have rooftop solar and battery backup, to very much localize, to get off of the transmission lines and the transformers and coming long distances and creating these PCBs along the way of our infrastructure. So that's a change that needs to happen. And then the other issue, so that's, localizing our solar electrical generation and power source so we don't have the transmission lines. And then the other thing was waste, and also then the greening of our cities, the greening. We need to green San Jose. That's the message. That's even what Prince Charles was saying, that we have to rebuild nature as he's at the COP26 today, having nature. And that was what my husband, the biologist, is saying, is that we have to live much more densely on each block. He was saying we need to move it to become dense, and the rest of the block is growing our food so that our neighborhoods can become self-sufficient. And that's where you can have the more, recharging the aquifer and then collecting the water off of the roofs. And the aquifer becomes our backup of our water. But, we need to create more land that we're doing that. And we can't be building, we have to degrowth. That's what degrowth means, so that we can be, having that. And then the other thing is waste. How much waste? Oh, and of course, the issue of we need to ban those pesticides we're using, the Roundup. That needs to be banned. I have it in my neighborhood. All right.
Thank you. Next speaker is Andrew Boone.
Thank you, Chair Davis. This is Andrew Boone. I basically wanted to comment on, again, this is an issue of there's too much pollution. There's too much going into the creeks and rivers and into the bay. And where is it coming from? It's mostly coming from overuse of fossil fuels. The extremely high number of cars being operated in San Jose, a large number of airplanes. And it just reminds me of the song, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone. They pave paradise and put up a parking lot." So over time, we've paved over our paradise, the Valley of the Heart's Delight, and put up all these parking lots. It's surface parking lots and wide streets and highways and all this concrete that are the impermeable surfaces causing the pollutants to go into the water. We need to reduce the amount of impermeable surfaces, and just making sure that new development includes bioretention areas, that isn't enough. That's a tiny, tiny sliver. We need to convert the parking lots back to plants, back to natural spaces. We need to replace the parking lots and the highways and all these impermeable surfaces with the paradise that we used to have. And I don't mean do it all at once, but bit by bit, we need to plant trees. We need to grow our own food here locally in San Jose. And this will do more than anything else to reduce pollution going into our creeks and streams. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Blair.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for this item. I'm trying to fix my computer problem. So I didn't hear this item as well as I should. I could have. I'm sorry about that. But it's nice to hear Rajani is working on this. I will learn how to better say her name in the future. For now, I hope Rajani can be okay. Yeah, it's nice to see she's working on this. I guess I can just, thanks for the words of the previous two speakers. And I guess a nod to Paul Soto, who after a month now, I think I'm starting to miss him. I think I'll start talking about him more this month. Hope he can come back soon, wherever he may be. Paul and I used to consider, that for as much as what Andrew Boone just talked about, the future of what we can do with parking lot issues, it's my hope that there's a bit of sensitivity involved. People on the east side were a bit concerned about how these good new parking, environmental ideas and water runoff issues for parking lots. There was a bit of a question about it maybe a year ago, and I know you guys have all been working on the issue to try to work something out with it. Good luck how this negotiation process is going, and that is sensitive to all sides of a community. The future of a good environment should be the goal, and it's from that I hope we can be open to the needs of individual neighborhoods and what that has to work through. So good luck on this issue, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Turning it back to my colleagues, Councilmember Cohen.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this presentation. A couple of questions. The permit that we're talking about for next summer is the permit from the, I guess it's federal government on wastewater runoff. Is that right?
It's the State Water Board.
State Water Board, right. But we have our new procedures and permit process for development. When will that be proposed and take effect?
Once the permit becomes effective in July, those requirements will also take effect.
They'll take effect next July as well. Okay. Yep. And in addition to that, are we, as we go forward with updating our bike lanes and other road infrastructure improvements, I know there's been talk about some of this green infrastructure for drainage, using some of those new installations to put in that greenery that will allow stormwater to run through natural filtering rather than into storm drains. Are we as a city starting to look into how we can incorporate that into some of our street upgrades?
I think I can take that one on, Councilmember Cohen. It's a little bit of a nuanced answer. So first of all, as Jeff went through the presentation, the requirements to add green infrastructure are really triggered if the subbase is disturbed on paving, which doesn't really happen with most of the work we do. The only example I can think of in the last year that would have required under these new rules, GSI provisions would have been, there was a concrete project we did under Alma that might have, because of how deep it went, triggered the GSI requirements. So as far as, the requirements go, it's probably not a dramatic impact that we would expect immediately. Now, to your other point, I think it is a best practice to be considered as far as adding green infrastructure when major upgrades to lanes and roadways are being made. It comes down to resources in the end. As you install green infrastructure, those items need to be maintained. They're typically high maintenance. They require lots of landscape maintenance, soil trade outs and stuff like that. So it can be pretty substantial. So I would say, the planning group within DOT is always looking at these things, and there are several, I think, examples of green infrastructure being implemented on roadways, but I don't think it is something that is fully resourced to the level where we're going to roll out, massive green infrastructure this year. Now, I do think that there's a number of people in public works, ESD, DOT, talking about what this will look like in the future and trying to find ways and maybe funding strategies to make that happen, and including looking for grants. But again, with as it is with many of these kinds of questions, it comes down to resources, both on the front end and then the ongoing operations and maintenance.
And obviously that's a major point, is that these are always trade-off between what we spend now and what we spend later, and how we get resources to make the right changes up front, both for our environment, but also for the infrastructure costs later. And I guess an interesting question that you just triggered in my mind, you talked about the maintenance of this green infrastructure. Obviously, there's maintenance and cost to having water running into the storm drains as well, right? So is there some kind of way to compare the maintenance of the storm drain infrastructure versus what the maintenance would be if we eventually were to replace a lot of it with more of this green methodology?
So, Councilmember, it's a work in progress, as Rick mentioned. We don't want to spend too much time until the regulations are finalized. But I know I can speak for all the departments, Public Works, DOT, and ESD, that we're going to be committed to implementing at a minimum what is required of us, and we're going to aspire to do everything possible, but certainly resources are limited. But we don't know yet. We have a lot to learn, and I know that Matthew Nguyen is from Public Works is looking at kind of that cost ROI balance, and how do you make sure you're spending a dollar that doesn't require $3 of maintenance. But it's a big system, and we just don't have those answers yet.
I appreciate that, and I know that this is complicated. There's no easy answers to this, but it's thought provoking, and I want to just raise some of the questions. Back to the how this affects private landowners. Right now, you mentioned single family homes are exempt. This includes, it's not just single family homes, but it includes like duplexes and other types of homes on single lots. Is that the current exemption?
Yes, it impacts multifamily dwellings, commercial, industrial properties of a certain size. Currently, single family homes as standalone projects. So if you were to just build one home somewhere, that would be exempt. But if you were to build 30 homes, that development would be required under this permit and the next one. The change that's happening is related to the single family homes, just the individual homes. Right. And those would be triggering it at 10,000 square feet.
So 10,000 square feet. So I was going to ask if this applies to like an ADU construction or something on a home, but presumably those wouldn't be big enough to trigger this, right?
Right.
And when people are paving their front yards, for example, like they do sometimes without getting the right permits and things, I guess again, it would have to be a pretty large project in order for that to trigger this requirement.
Yes, it would be a significant amount of impervious area for a single family home to have both roof and driveway or any other paving.
And the trigger is a delta. So if they currently have a home and a driveway and they're adding more space, the trigger here is how much new space they're adding, not the total space that already exists. Or am I interpreting that wrong?
Yes, you're interpreting that correctly.
Correctly. Okay. So it's about what they're adding to the property now and not the total amount of impervious.
Yes, unless they replace, actually. So it's adding new or replacing. So if you are tearing up your driveway and putting a new one in, that would also count. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And
No problem.
I'll move acceptance of the report.
Second.
Thank you. Do other colleagues have questions? I have a couple. I want to thank Councilmember Cohen for his questions. I'm not sure if I heard it or if we just don't know yet, but these proposed changes, if they, just in terms of trash capture devices, how much would that cost the city to implement? We have an estimate on that? Rajani, looks like you're shaking your head.
Not at this time, because there's other provisions that require this solution, and so we haven't quantified that. But essentially, it's $1 million to 133,000, depending upon if it's a private property or if we have to do a collection system. So, but at this time, we haven't quantified that.
So I read that part in the memo about a trash capture device for specific, like a private business. Would that be, is that cost effective to do, or could we have a number of property owners that would be required to have one of those? Could they pay into a system to pay for a larger trash capture device?
Jeff,
or do we not know these things yet?
I'll take a stab, and if you want to, right now we don't know, because it's saying for all private properties, which obviously is not extremely cost effective. And will it really address the trash that's within the storm sewer system? With that's a concern we have. So I mean, as we once this tentative order is official, that's definitely the next step to further analyze and see, are there better opportunities that we can address trash? But we're definitely commenting on the practicality of this for our size of the city.
Okay. It might be helpful to, when we're commenting, to have some, at least back of the envelope calculations to give them a sense of what they're really asking for. And small businesses, I mean, when we're talking about $133,000 for a small business, I mean, many small businesses don't even make that much in profit in a year, or sometimes even two. And, you know, you're just asking for people not to be able to feed themselves if they're small business owners. That's very concerning, especially coming out of the pandemic, where we're trying to improve our resiliency and keep our small businesses hanging on. I'm very concerned about that. And then for Rick, you talked a little bit about the ongoing operating and maintenance costs for our green stormwater infrastructure. Can you just ballpark that? What does it cost for our Park Avenue, for example? Because we have multiple locations along Park Avenue that have that green stormwater infrastructure. Do we know what we spend annually on
I can
that?
provide you with, I do know that the current green infrastructure that's installed, the maintenance is funded. So I can provide that to you. I don't have it off the top of my head. I know that as we add more, we would require more maintenance funding to be able to maintain that.
And does that come through, is that through the DOT budget?
No, it is, well, kind of, but it's 446 is the stormwater maintenance fund, or stormwater capital fund, not capital fund, sorry, operations fund that we use for maintaining most of these facilities.
Okay. Thanks. That's it for my questions. We have a motion, so we can vote.
Foley,
Aye.
Perales,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
and Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item 3 is municipal water billing and customer service audit report. Joe?
Good afternoon, Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm here with Brittany Harvey and Marisa Lynn from my office, and Brittany's bringing up her screen here. We're here to present our audit of municipal water billing and customer service. The city can take steps to enhance customer service during an unprecedented time. So just a little background, Muni Water serves around 26,000 customers across North San Jose, Alviso, Evergreen, Edenvale, and Coyote Valley. 3 departments, primary departments, the Environmental Services Department, Finance Department, and Information Technology Department coordinate to deliver water, generate billing statements, and respond to customer service requests. And the objective of this audit was to assess the accuracy of billings and customer service from Muni Water. We had 4 findings, and the first finding was that the billing process ensures accurate billing statements to customers. Bills are distributed to Muni Water customers on a bi-monthly basis. Before going out, bills go through a series of reviews to ensure that billed amounts are correct before being sent to a customer, and that's shown in the flow chart here. Accounts which appear to have abnormal bills or water usage are flagged for review, and the city staff will review to ensure meter readings and bills are accurate. This is by either staff within the, maybe sending people out in the field, or it could be cleared in the office. Before being billed, all flags must be cleared before being sent. We sampled over 500 bills to test whether they were generated appropriately, aligned with council approved rates, and matched customer information in the CIS, the city's utility billing system. In our sample, we found that bills and inputs were accurate. Our second finding is that Muni Water can take steps to better notify customers and respond to leaks. ESD receives potential water leak alerts through its regular meter reading process. However, most customers are not notified of these potential leak alerts. For example, between March and May of 2021, just 29% of customers were notified of potential leaks as identified in the system. This is primarily because the leak notification process is a manual process with ESD staff providing leak notifications via email, letters, and phone calls. In addition to the manual nature of the process, another hurdle is that only a portion of customers have a registered email with Muni Water. By collecting additional contact information from customers and potentially using existing tools, the city could expand leak notices. For example, the city uses a third-party platform to provide enrolled customers water use reports. This could potentially be leveraged for leak alerts as well, though it would require customers to be enrolled in the program. Also noted earlier that abnormal bills are flagged for review. This is based on set criteria that were established in 2016 to, for example, identify customers with higher or lower than expected water usage or some other potential indicator of a problem. In some instances, the bills are flagged for review. The bills that are flagged for review require a water systems operator to investigate whether the meter is working properly. However, most of the meter investigations, find that the meter is working properly. However, we did note that water leak data suggests that criteria for investigating potential water leaks may be too high. Currently, a bill will be flagged for review only if water consumption is 325% greater than past historical usage, or if it is one of the 30 residential customers with the highest water consumption in the cycle. In this finding, we made recommendations to collect additional contact information from customers and potentially automate the leak notification process, periodically evaluate the criteria used for meter investigations, streamlining the service order process. We noted that currently it's a paper-based process that's managed by 2 separate teams. And lastly, updating the methodology used to assess performance. Our third finding is that Muni Water can enhance customer service by making more information available or accessible. The city provides information to Muni Water customers in several ways, including through its website, social media, mailed notices, and of course its bi-monthly bills. Customers are notified through these channels with information about their water service, including service charges they owe, potential water shutoffs, and water conservation practices. We did find that the city can take additional steps to enhance its communications with customers. First, the city can make it easier to enroll in service options for those customers who may qualify as low income or medically vulnerable. At the time of the audit, Muni Water had not registered any customers into this program. Partly this is because the program began right before the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the start of the pandemic, the state enacted a water shutoff moratorium, which removed the risk of customers being disconnected from service. Also, the process is not customer friendly. For example, it requires customers to print out an English-only form and visit City Hall, which was of course closed for much of the last year. We noted some additional areas of improvement in this finding, including website content can be more consistent across departments, such as in the FAQs. Not all customer-facing materials are translated into both Spanish and Vietnamese. The use of plain language for some notices, such as the late payments notice and notice of termination. And lastly, online billing statements are not available, and some information can be more consistent. So our recommendation in this area include expanding Muni Water's website content to address additional common customer requests, improving language accessibility, make it easier for low-income and medically vulnerable customers to apply for assistance programs, and making detailed billing statements available online, standardizing information across the different platforms and materials. Our last finding is that customers are facing financial burdens due to the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant financial toll on Muni Water customers. As of June 2021, more than 1,100 Muni Water customers owed a combined $1.1 million in overdue balances, which is 18 times more than what was owed in December 2019 prior to the pandemic. In addition, the city billed $1 million in late payment charges in fiscal year 2020-2021. In response to financial burdens felt statewide, the California governor enacted a moratorium on water shutoffs, which has been extended through December 2021. Although Muni Water could resume water disconnections for customers with past due balances of more than 60 days, once the moratorium ends, it is exploring ways to support its customers and prevent shutoffs, including aid from the federal low-income household water assistance program, the California Water and Wastewater Arrearages Payment Program, and California's Rental Relief Program. So we had one recommendation in this finding, that's to address the financial burdens of the pandemic on Muni Water customers, the city to implement a combination of strategies to assist customers, potentially including automatic enrollment into payment plans, outreach about state or local assistance programs, or distributing financial assistance to customers if available. Our audit report includes a total of 13 recommendations. We'd like to thank the Environmental Services Department, the Finance Department, the Information Technology Department, the City Attorney's Office, and the Budget Office for their time, information, insight, and cooperation during the audit process. The audit report is available on our website. I ask that you accept the report and cross-reference the November 16th meeting of the City Council. And I don't know who I'm turning it over. I'll turn it over to maybe Jeff for the administration's response, or
I'll take a stab at the first go around. Good afternoon, Jeff Provenzano, Deputy Director, Environmental Services Department. And there is a response. We provided responses to each of the recommendations, and generally we accept and agree with all the recommendations. Most of them, I think, are green lighted in that we are going to be working on them, actually started working on them already. Some of the other ones require a little bit more thought and planning around, and perhaps some resources and funding, but in generally agree with them. It's just how quickly we can get them done. And with that, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll go to the members of the public first. And the first public speaker is Tessa Woodmancy.
Good. Well, I really appreciate Mr. Rice, is as he pronounces his name. I think I did it right. That he does a great job on auditing, and auditing is so important. And I'm just so impressed that the city does that. And I'd love to see, auditing is what we're looking at in terms of our fossil fuel use. But that, I know it's a side off topic, but that's what we need in our community, is to be auditing the fossil fuel use of our city and well, just starting with our city. Anyway, and so with our water use, thank you so much for that, because definitely the low income, that's something important. And even at the San Jose Water Company, they don't make it easy to find those programs. And what? Hello? Yeah. So anyway, I'm just saying that they don't make it easy to find the low income programs and the assistance that they could provide. So I appreciate Mr. Rice bringing that out in terms of the auditing he was doing. But even the San Jose Water Company that I'm part of, they don't make it easy to find those programs, and they're not advertising them like maybe like PG&E does. So they could do better about that in general, to advertise their discounted rate for low income. And in terms of our water usage, of course, we've got to learn to capture our rainwater and that type of thing. And the water companies do have programs for that. So we need to all be getting our cisterns and figuring out those ways of conserving as we go forward in our droughts, because even we are still in, they call it a mega drought that we've been in. And, that's important that we don't give up. We have done that in the past, thinking we're not in a drought, but we are in a much, in our Mediterranean climate, there's very little rain and water, and and with climate change, it's making it worse. And so we really have to be always considering capturing water and getting those programs going.
Thank you. Blair?
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. I have trouble pronouncing the auditor's name as well. I think it's Joe Raw. It's French, and learning how to say French names can be difficult. Raw, maybe that's how you say it. Roy. Yeah, thank you for this item. I just wanted to remind that, there's a future of, this is kind of my time to be a friendly reminder of the importance of the future of subsidy in this age of COVID-19, and how we're getting a lot of state and federal funding help at this time that can make the subsidy process easier to talk about amongst ourselves. And a reminder that city government can do their part to make a subsidy ideas more understandable and accessible to the everyday community, and for everyday community to learn to better ask what choices are available to them, because there can be many choices available in subsidy help that can be of help at this time, and it's hard to learn to not be afraid to ask for that, and it takes time and work and effort to learn how to do that, and patience. So good luck to community how they can ask if they want to the available choices with subsidies at this time. And I think city government is learning how they can be more open in offering what choices are available. And that's our way of learning. And in this COVID age, good luck to ourselves. And thank you for this item.
Thank you. Turning back to my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions or comments for staff? Okay, while people are thinking, I just had one question, and I'm not sure if this is for Jeff, but about the administration response, recommendation number 4, to streamline the service order process. ESD, in coordination with ITD, should update the process to enable staff to coordinate service orders electronically, and the target date for completion is December 2022. Will that require, it looks like it might require some, it says extensive process re-engineering and integration with CIS, and I'm wondering if that timeline is realistic, especially given that it looks like it needs a budget item that wouldn't be funded until, likely funded until July.
I'll start on that and see if anyone else wants to jump in. I think what we're saying there is that by December 2022, we will do an analysis and see what it is that we have to do. Yes, we're anticipating that implementation would be a little bit different, would require a budget action and staff allocation to get that over the goal line. I think what we're saying here is an analysis by 2022 of what we could do going forward. Okay.
Joe, is that, I just want to make sure. So when Joe gives us our updates, he's using these target dates for completion as closing out that recommendation. Isn't that right, Joe?
Yes, and so one thing, we meet with auditees throughout the process, and we heard that there were potentially some issues in that updating the process to have service orders being kicked out by CAS. We offered some other ideas, basically email as opposed to a paper document.
Right.
What are some other options outside of a complete re-engineering of a system that is just a few years old? I think in the long term, what Jeff is describing, yes, but is there a way that we can get away from having a piece of paper put in someone's inbox that somebody has to come in and pick up, take out to the field, fill out, come back in, put back in someone's inbox, and then they have to transcribe it into the system?
Yeah.
Can we do something in the interim to address that? So I think long term, that broader re-engineering is the longer term goal. Is there something in the intermediate we can do to get away from that paper-based process? And that's what we're hoping for. And so that's why we wrote the recommendation as is, without saying, we wrote it at a pretty high level of just, I think it's just some way of, I'm trying to remember the specific language. Process to enable the staff to coordinate electronically. That's how we wrote it at that level, if there was another way of getting there without that full process re-engineering. So hopefully that's helpful. But to your first question, yes, that's what we're going to be using that December 22.
Okay, so the hope is that there is some electronic process, even if there's an implementation of a new system or something that hasn't happened, that the electronic process, even if it's email based, has been
something
completed by December 2022.
That's what we have. That's what we've been told. So that's what we'll be using. Yes.
Okay, so that target date for completion then, Jeff, is for this interim process. Is that correct?
We'll have to get back to you once we have IT here. They're working with them. Will be important to kind of figure out the analysis, what tools we can have And so I think they may be able to provide a little bit more in-depth answer on what we need to do to get there.
Okay, I would just like to point out that what Joe is saying and what you're saying, Jeff, are not the same thing at all. And what you have here as yellow as the paragraphs in here don't jive with the completion date. So what you're saying is the analysis will be done, but that's not closing out the recommendation. So I'm not trying to pick on you, but this has just been an issue for me with audits as we've gone through and had these administration comments at the end of audits for the last couple of years that please don't give an overly optimistic target date for completion. If I know that implementation of new software and process re-engineer takes a good 1.5 to 2 years when we're talking about something that's fairly straightforward. If it's not straightforward, we want to know that. If it is straightforward, I want to know what it's going to take to really close out the recommendation. And if it's something as easy as what Joe is saying, but you want to go further than that, then I would like this administration response to be really clear about that. We will be phasing in our completion of this recommendation. We'll do the quick and dirty will be done by December 2022. The full, enhanced, improved process will be done by December 2024 or whatever. I just think that's really important for us to know, as opposed to just giving us what we want to hear. That's it for my comments. Councilmember Esparza.
Thanks. Yes, I had a couple of questions. One of them was on the leaks, the notifications. So mentioned that there are 9,000 emails, and we only have 9,000 emails, and that we've been doing it letters and phone calls. Can you give me some more detail on the ability to text as well?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, can you repeat that question?
Can you give me some more information on our ability to text in addition to email?
Yes. Right now, we don't require emails and phone numbers as part of a requirement to set up an account. When we do have that information, texting or phone calls is one option. We're not sure if they're cell phones either or landlines. So we don't have that the data separated that way in our billing system and our customer database. So they are options. And I think that's what we're saying is we'll go back and look at how we can ramp up our contact information, our customer profiles, in order to be a little bit better at doing outreach and getting in contact with people.
And can we make the text multilingual? I know that's going into the other finding as well, but can we make sure that we do text bilingually or multilingually, not just the mail notices, multilingual?
Yes, and there's other recommendations you mentioned, how we communicate and what language we're communicating in. That's one of the things we want to look at, and in particular on the leak notifications. Ideally, it would be under the customer profile of what language they would prefer that we communicate in, and we would then send out notifications under their preference. But in general, yeah, going forward, we can, I think with all of our forms, is to do more translations than what we were doing historically.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of the requiring the 325% beyond the average, can you talk more about how we're going to correct that threshold?
I'm not familiar with the statistic that you're mentioning. Was that the parameters, the leak detection parameters?
That's correct, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in our billing system, it's simply, the meters that we have currently are set up to provide a notification to us when it detects that there might be a potential leak. These are not leaks themselves necessarily. It's just, it's a program that gives us an estimate that there might be something that's occurring there. And one of the recommendations is to go in there and to modify the parameters, which we're looking at now, to minimize the amount of work orders. There's labor involved to go out and look at each one, change the parameters to reduce the amount of staff time and potentially reallocate that staff time to something else, such as a more customer service oriented.
Thank you. I mean, it also impacts somebody's ability to pay, right? I had a question on the third finding around information access. I think there have been other concerns shared about the fact that many pieces of information aren't translated or only translated into one other language. And that's obviously not helpful in a city that's as diverse as San Jose is. One of the things that also caught my attention was that a lot of the information is only available through links to PDFs on the website, including information on the low-income designation for qualified ratepayers and the fact that we currently have no ratepayers utilizing that program. Can you talk more about that, please?
Yes, it's evolved over time. Right before COVID hit, we were in front of council with the recommendation that council accepted that updated our notification process and customer shutoff process, including the low-income program. Along with that were the requirements of putting information on this program in 6 different languages, which I think are identified there in the report. Previously, we had been translating in English and 2 other languages, Spanish and Vietnamese, or the other 2 that we primarily translated in. The other ones that were added in as part of this program were Korean, Tagalog, Korean, Tagalog, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and of course English. So going forward, I think that's one of the recommendations which staff have accepted and are working on now, is to take the other processes and forms that are either just English-based or English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and going full 6 language translations on everything. And then I believe the other question was on the amount of enrollment or lack of enrollment in the low-income program. That the establishment of that program and the forms was right before COVID. I think Joe mentioned this, when we stopped doing shutoffs and the notification process around shutoffs, that inadvertently, that the triggers for all of that was that low-income program. And so by stopping everything, that program and enrolling people wasn't occurring because we simply weren't shutting people off or questioning or contacting them on lack of payment. But going forward, it'll be important. We're going to be, at some point, we'll be re-implementing that program, and we anticipate an increase, definitely an increase in enrollment in the low-income program.
Yeah, you know, I understand that because there were no shutoffs, so we just kicked the can down the road. On the pandemic financial burden, I believe that Director Gary Kremen from Valley Water is leading an effort to create a fund on their end. So I know that there are the other funds, but this would be a local fund in addition to add to the pot to assist ratepayers with their bills. Are you coordinating with them?
A little bit. There's been some discussion for about 1.5 years, Valley Water, on on how they can provide financial assistance. I don't believe the details are finalized yet. Where it had kind of ended off was that we know of was it'd be a loan type program for the city for us to take. We've looked at that for us to take on a loan. There are some administrative and legal hurdles that we have to go through to take a loan from Valley Water. What we have advocated for is that they provide a direct funding program to residents, or potentially that they would, in their water rates, they would adjust them in a way that would provide a more affordable lower tier that we could then pass on to customers. That would be another way of helping going forward. You may be familiar, they have just a one fee, which we have to then pass on equally to everybody. If they were to do a lower subsidized tier, we could pass on that lower amount too. So yeah, definitely participating in ways they could restructure and provide more assistance. Our primary though, other than Valley Water, the primary area that we're looking at to help assist is participating in the state arrearages program. And so that one looks like it's definitely doable, and we're hoping to come back to council in a couple of weeks with the council memo on this and some recommendations, and applying within the month or so to participate in that program.
So, so Valley Water is pursuing the loan. That's new. So I had been told that they were going to create a fund, and that mechanism was what's they're trying to figure out. So I had been unaware of the shift to a loan program. So, okay. All right. That's helpful. That's it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Want to go ahead and make the motion?
I'll move to accept the report.
Thank you.
Again.
Thanks. If no one else has any comments or questions.
That includes the cross-reference, I hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Am I right? Councilmember Esparza?
Yes, it includes the cross-reference. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready for the vote.
Foley,
Aye.
Morales,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Cohen.
Aye.
And Davis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, the Vision Zero Traffic Safety Report. John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davis and the committee. John Rissa, Director of Transportation. This afternoon, we've got another update on our Vision Zero program. Jesse Minceratz is ready to go. Unless there are any questions, we can jump right in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you, John. And I'm accompanied by Lam Cruz, who is DOT's Division Manager for Transportation Safety, on the panel afterwards. In this presentation, we are going to focus on our recent accomplishments, but there is also some talk about traffic collision trends in 2021. And we're also going to talk about upcoming work. Let's see. Just a moment, I'm just resizing things on my screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so San Jose traffic fatalities in the last 10 years. First off, I would like to acknowledge that I will be talking about traffic fatalities and that these are not just these numbers on the page, but they're also our friends, family, and neighbors. When we talk about that, it's just important to begin with that. In 2020, so first off, San Jose traffic fatalities doubled in the last 10 years, and I'm going to be talking about these trends more on the next slides. In 2020, we saw the numbers go down a bit, but in 2021 so far, we're seeing them probably go back up. So this slide looks at the first 3 quarters of the year ending in September 30th. And at that point, we had 47 traffic fatalities, 19 of them people killed while walking. If you look at the recent years before 2020 and 2019, is a higher number both for traffic fatalities and also for people hit while walking at this point of the year. The other number that's really a jump out in these numbers is people killed while on motorcycle. There are 8 so far in 2021, and we've never had that many before in the last 5 years. Looking at 2021 on injuries, which lags a little bit in the way that we put it in the data, they're manually entered. So we're showing up to the end of July. You can see for cumulative injuries by month that in 2021 in the blue line, we're below the usual range. But if you look at fatal and severe injuries, which is abbreviated as KSI, the number is at the top of the range on the top right. And if you look at cumulative traffic fatalities by month, the blue line goes from below the range at the beginning of the year, sort of crossing through the normal range around June. Notably, the state reopened on June 15th. And then as you go above, it goes above the range beginning in July. So we're currently above the range. And also, there's particularly a big jump if you compare quarter 3 2021 to quarter 3 2020. So to look at year to date, there are 47 traffic fatalities up to the end of September. 22 of them, or 47%, are on the priority safety corridors. That is higher than usual. We typically see 30 to 40% in a year. And notably, a lot of them have been on Monterey Road. 4 of those 7, so there's 7 on Monterey Road, 4 of the 7 involved unhoused people, and 3 of them were at the same intersection, which was Monterey and Kirtner-Tully. 32 or 68% of the 47 occurred in dark outer hours. I already mentioned that we've had a very high number for motorcycles this year. And one of the big groups, or as I mentioned, is people killed while walking. So they are 19 of the 47, or 40%. Of that 19 people, 12 are outside of crosswalks. And so we're interested to find out more about that. You know, is it close to a crosswalk or far from a crosswalk? But we're going to do more analysis there. 33 or 70% involve a male driver, and 15 of the 47 have speeding as a factor. As a note, speeding is the top known factor contributing to fatal and severe injuries in San Jose. So to talk a little more about speeding particularly, we wanted to look and see where they occur. And so 41 of the 47 fatalities occur on a roadway that has a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or higher. And 15 of the 47 I mentioned before are due to speeding. So just to put this slide in more context, we wanted to show how that looks in the last 5 years of data, basically. So 2016 to 2020 are all full data years, and 2021 is the partial data year up to the end of September. And so I mentioned before that 41 of 47 was 87%, and that is the percentage of fatalities that occur on a posted speed limit corridor 35 mile an hour and higher. If you look specifically at pedestrian fatalities, which are 19, then 16 of those 19, which is 84% in 2021, are again on the roadways that have a posted 35 mile per hour speed limit and higher. So you may wonder what we could do to change the speed limit. And so one of the big developments in 2021 is that the Assembly has passed and the governor has signed a bill called AB 43. And AB 43 offers flexibility to jurisdictions to lower the speed limit in some cases. And so while not all of the provisions of the bill will be available at first, the ones that will be available starting in 2022 are for roads continuous with a business activity district, which from our preliminary analysis could be used on about 8 miles of roadway in San Jose. and about 2 of those miles are on Vision Zero priority safety corridors. And all the other provisions of the bill, such as what a high injury network means, will require Caltrans to work with California cities to develop. Caltrans is also required to set up an online adjudication tool to give the public the option to contest citations online. And they've been given until 2024 to do that. So transitioning to projects and investment update. In the last fiscal year, there have been 219 projects completed, but we wanted to call out the ones that were on priority safety corridors. 3 of those are quick build projects. And for those of you who don't know, the Vision Zero Action Plan, the most recent one, was passed at the beginning of 2020. So the quick build team was only created in 2020. So these projects have been created since then. So in roughly 1 year's time. The capital projects, so the quick build projects, we have Center Road, which is the biggest one, Fruitail Avenue, a bit shorter, and a few intersections on Story Road, which is the first phase of that project. In terms of capital projects, we have McLaughlin Avenue and White Road, and both of those projects took about 5 years to complete. They're both funded by the Highway Safety Improvement Program, otherwise known as HSIP. And so that process just takes a long time because of the way that capital grant administration and process works. There are also 43 pedestrian and roadway safety improvement projects, which an example of those are enhanced crosswalks with flashing beacons, center line or edge line projects. There are also 58 traffic signal projects, predominantly signal timing adjustments. And there were 113 bike projects. If you don't know the different types of classes of bike projects, the ones that we'll call out are the protected ones, which are called Class 4. And there were 2 bike boulevards among them on 10th and 11th Street. Going into the future, we have 187 scheduled projects, and 6 of them are on priority safety corridors. 4 of them are quick build projects. 1 of them is the phase 2 of Story Road, Branham Lane, Hillsdale Avenue, McKee Road. We also have 2 capital improvement projects, Tully Road and McKee Road. Both of those are funded by the One Bay Area Grant Program known as OBAG. And so those grants were originated in 2016 and are coming up to be built in the coming fiscal year. As well as, again, the types of projects that we mentioned before, 46 pedestrian and roadway safety projects, 83 traffic signal projects, 16 intersection safety projects from our citywide collision review program, as well as 36 bike projects. We're also starting some new work. We are doing, some new programs. These are independent of the sort of road redesign work. One of them is the Vision Zero safety messaging contract with the consultant MIG. We just had the kickoff meeting for that last week, and you'll be hearing more about that in the coming year. But they will be creating a strategic communications platform and then developing a campaign and then producing and distributing that campaign and then evaluating that campaign. And then another big project is the Walksafe San Jose Pedestrian Safety Program, which is funded by a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant. And it begins, well, today, but really today we just have the ability to issue the RFP. So it probably will also be a few months until you hear more about that. And that one is with the sub-applicant CalWalks to do inclusive outreach to determine focus areas. It is focused in the council districts that have the most fatal and severe injuries, which are districts 3, 5, 6, and 7. But there are also a whole suite of strategies that will be having the consultants research and convene working groups about. And I won't get into the list of them, but that's the sort of citywide aspect of the program. Looking at some of the before and afters, this is McLaughlin Avenue at Audubon Drive looking south. This 3.2 mile project from Interstate 280 to Capitol Expressway is 3 miles long, and you can see in the before that it was a pretty big open street, and in the after, We have the planted median. We've added crosswalks with flashing beacons. And this was completed in winter 2020 and was a $3.3 million that was funded with federal money. And then this is Center Road, northbound approaching Davis Way, the before and the after. This is we're showing the quick build part of the project. There was also a capital and pavement projects that we also leveraged as part of this program. We used a complete street study that had been completed in, I believe, April 2020 to implement the major quick build improvements. And because it was a quick build project, we were able to see the improvements built sooner than we would be able to with a capital project. And so this 4-mile stretch from Astoria Road to Monterey Road, the quick build section of it cost about $345,000, and it was completed in summer 2021. And now I am going to press play on this video and you'll be able to see Center Road before and after, but I won't play too much of it, just given my internet connection may not allow it to go too fast. So depending on what you can see on your end, you can see the before and the after, where there are a buffered bike lane with vertical delineators in the after. And here we're just north of Capitol Expressway, coming up to that same section, Davis Way, where before there were 2 lanes here, it was a bottleneck. And this redesign has those 2 lanes be more continuous and connected, basically bringing vehicles through here to this clearer pedestrian crossing that goes to a retail area. And then also on the north part there at Balfour Drive, the same area with the bottleneck that existed before ending. It creates a clearer, actually all the intersections are a lot clearer now. And I think because I'm ending time and because it's very choppy, I'm gonna pause it here. And I believe that this is my last slide.
So, Chair, we've completed our presentation.
Thank you. We'll go to the public first. Tessa?
I was just appreciate the meeting, and I was writing Lamb Cruz because you mentioned that he was the head of safety. Good. And so what I was saying to him is that we need to put in your database Stockton Avenue. And you know, this is where we don't have this, like, it needs to be more transparent. I appreciate Vision Zero, but we need transparency and access to these databases and this information so we can see. Like, I've been complaining about Stockton Avenue, and other even members of Shasta Hampshire Park Neighborhood Association have said that we needed to improve Stockton Avenue, and this is like maybe 15 years back or so. So, you know, I want this in a database that we can know. And I even talked to Chair Dev Davis, which I appreciated because I told her, and she appreciated and liked it, that we need a median, a tree line median in the center of Stockton Avenue to engineer, you know, the slowness into the, you know, traffic calming into the street because it's too wide. And yes, it's a 35-mile-an-hour street. And I hope that we could get that down to 20. And that's how it should be running through our neighborhood. But like Andrew Boone was saying, we have to engineer, and my husband says as well, we have to engineer these roads for traffic calming and to slow the traffic. So on Stockton Avenue, put it in this database, whatever that is, that gets capital improvements, you know, that, and I want to see where it goes, if it ever moves up in the line, and that type of accountability. And then the issue that I brought up before about Coleman Avenue, that there's a stretch from Heading to Taylor on the west side going south. You have a bike lane as you go over the highway, and then you have another one as you go past Taylor by the shopping center. And then there's like a mile where there is no bike lane, like as if we disappear. So how does that get, you know, I'm told, well, when it gets repaved, when is that? And that shouldn't.
Next speaker is Blair.
Hi. Barry Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the words of Tessa. I mean, she really said it nicely. I think there's ways that we can talk about a future of community safety issues, and that community safety can ask the questions of what are good open public policies and data collection, you know, for the technology and community safety needs that will be needed for these Vision Zero issues. The two, I feel, can really work hand in hand together. They can work well together. And in fact, with these upcoming new strategies to consider the future of Vision Zero, you know, it's the open public policy ideas that speak to the ideas of community harmony, and you know, which is such an important concept to the initial ideas of what Vision Zero is supposed to be about. It's not just about the future of surveillance tech. It's a number of issues concerning green sustainability. I don't know, neighborhood communication. You know, ourselves just talking with each other more, being more open with each other, and you know, that's why I think open public policies can really help move along a good process, the future of Vision Zero. With that said, I hope the KSI issue is learning to work itself out. You're receiving new ways of to use equity to discuss the future of how to understand statistics and reporting on more homeless people being killed than you were able to report in years previous. And it would be sad if you would be using these statistics to manipulate things and to manipulate our future funding and such. So good luck to really practice well the future of how to report KSI statistics to yourselves and to the public. Thank you.
Next speaker is Robin Romer.
Good afternoon. I wanted to express some thanks, but also share some concerns about this report. I want to thank staff for addressing safety issues piece by piece in projects all across the city. I'm even more grateful to council, and especially to the members of this committee. You have all shown great leadership in trying to make our streets safer for everyone, and I truly appreciate that. What I am concerned about is that your political leadership and the urgency you express often isn't, in my perspective, always matched by staff. In the pandemic, San Jose was the only city in the Bay Area, maybe in the nation, that didn't implement slow streets. Staff is still using questionable and outdated policy guidelines for implementing street calming on residential streets. This legislative session, San Jose failed to support important transportation bills, such as the bill to decriminalize jaywalking, as far as I'm aware. While cities like San Francisco or even LA are planning to use the mentioned AB 43 to aggressively lower speed limits on roads in their cities, I couldn't find any mention of actually implementing lower speed limits in San Jose anywhere in their staff report. It is also worth noting how the funding towards highway projects compares to the Vision Zero budget. Again, I'm so thankful for the political leadership this council has shown, and I hope you'll be able to push staff to move even faster and more comprehensively. Thank you.
Next speaker is call-in user 2.
Yeah, I'd like to add that I hope that this Vision Zero
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi. This caller commented on the consent calendar, then went off topic and engaged in inappropriate comments. And then before the next item on the agenda, the chair reminded all speakers to stay on topic and be respectful. On the next item on the agenda, the city roadmap on the wastewater treatment facility, the caller wasn't on topic, verbally abused the chair, threatened to come down and personally confront her. The statements were threatening and actually disruptive to the business of the meeting. Although the Brown Act allows for criticism of the policies, procedures, services, and acts or omissions of the City Council, verbal and physical threats are not acceptable and not tolerated at any meeting. So this particular caller is no longer permitted to comment at this meeting while the comments are under review.
Thank you. The next speaker is Andrew Boone.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I also appreciate the efforts of the city staff to address car traffic violence, which is at record levels, tragically, in San Jose this year. Since 47 people have been killed in car crashes through the end of the September, that means at this rate, 62 people will die by the end of the year, a record. This is the most deadly year ever recorded of the number of people killed by cars in San Jose. So it's a question of doing too little. It's too little, too late. You need to invest much more time and money into fixing the streets. The staff is aware, I see from the report, that the cause is correctly identified: high car speeds on wide arterial streets. We know what's causing this, but the city council is not directing the DOT to change it. The streets need to have fewer lanes in them so cars don't drive so fast. And we need to put more money into it. This isn't just to save people's lives, but to address catastrophic climate change. The fact that there's so many cars driving so fast, killing so many people, means that people don't walk or bike very much in San Jose. And the overall problem is that the city continues to engage in this austerity budgeting policy where the mayor says we can't raise taxes on corporations or they'll flee the city. That is absolutely false. Oakland and San Francisco tax large corporations at a much higher level than we do in San Jose. So we need to tax corporations and fund saving our residents' lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning back to my colleagues, Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and appreciate the staff report and the update. I have the pleasure of chairing the Vision Zero Task Force along with our co-chair, Councilmember Foley, and I know there's a lot of work that's gone on now, but unfortunately, as we see the data showing, and last year felt promising, but I think we knew it was potentially going to be an anomaly year. The numbers keep rising, and that absolutely is cause for concern. And I appreciate that we have the task force, and we'll be able to drill down even further on that. But important to get this update for the full committee and continue to move forward with our work and prioritizing how we can actually realize our vision of getting down to zero. We had asked for through the task force an RFP to evaluate and revamp our education and outreach process. And I know the firm MIG has been procured, and then last week, my understanding, kicked off its consultant study. And I wanted to see what the timeline is for their recommendations to be returning to the task force or even this committee.
We do have that as I don't believe I know the number, or rather the date offhand, but we do have a timeline that we can share with you for all of the deliverables from that consultant. In my recollection, I think that the first section, so their first deliverable, phase one, I believe ends or in spring, roughly. So I suspect that we'll be hearing from them in spring when they have an overlap between the first and second phases of the contract. So the first phase is the creating a platform, and the second phase is to create the first campaign. So those two phases overlap a little bit. My recollection is spring.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And if you wouldn't mind, Jesse, could you pull back up the slide? I just wanted to see if we can put up slide 5 again.
Slide 5, 1 second.
And thank you for prefacing the discussion, as we do in all of our Vision Zero task force meetings, on, obviously this is data we're looking at, but we're talking about actual lost lives here, and we have a lot of family members and loved ones that will participate with us in those meetings, and so I appreciate you prefacing that as well. Looking at this slide, I know there's some alarming trends all over the place, but the biggest one for me, and where I think we have an opportunity to make a difference, is on this priority safety corridors. 22 of those fatalities, and as you stated, that is higher than what we traditionally see. And that is where we have made a dedicated focus, or at least we've now dedicated to make the focus on improvements in those corridors. And what I'd like to see, and I think a goal for at least the Vision Zero task force should be to, as if we're prioritizing those areas, should be to get down to zero in those areas much more quickly than not. And so going the opposite direction is concerning, because those are areas, again, where we're making investments. You saw or you demonstrated that with the video and the slides on some of the improvements we made. Can you talk a little bit about these 22 fatalities in priority safety corridors, and were any of them, were they in areas where we've already made investments, or areas where we're going to be making investments, or were they just along those corridors and sort of outside of areas that we've been focused on immediately?
To make a general comment, I'm tempted to do this on the slides, but the quick build projects, which are the projects that we've originated about a year ago, are trying to make quick, basically, responses. Whereas the capital projects, which we originated in many cases years ago, are just now coming in. So there's a weird kind of disconnect between sort of making investments, because we have made the investments in the past, but it takes such a long time to deliver on them if they're a capital investment. So the intention of the quick build program is to be able to make those responses more quickly. But there's still obviously sort of capacity limitations on the quick build program. So for the 6 miles of streets that we built in the first year of the quick build program, obviously that's great going from zero. But there are 56 miles of these roadways that are within the city jurisdiction. Many of them do have capital projects that are underway and are likely to be delivered soon. Like 2 of them will be delivered the next fiscal year, but that still is not the majority of those 56 miles. So it's challenging to describe that, but we are working on projects on those streets, and those fatalities are occurring on places that we have given attention to, but however much capacity we have in the quick build program is effectively a limitation on how much we can address.
Yeah, maybe you can go down to slide 9.
Sure.
So I'd also like to quickly note that for the priority safety corridors where we have made improvements recently, we do intend to go back and do some pre and post project evaluation, where we'll be measuring the effectiveness of the project and doing tweaks if needed. So that is part of our work plan.
Thank you for jumping in, Lam. Can you let us know when you will be presenting that information? Will you be bringing that to the Vision Zero task force? Will that be coming here to this committee as well? My next question was going to be along those lines anyway. So.
Absolutely. We typically like to look at about 12 to 18 months data after the project. And once we do that evaluation, we'll be looking at a variation of crashes, speed data, also qualitative data. In the next couple of months, we'll be going out to Center Road and doing a survey to see, do people generally feel safer walking and biking out there? So we'll be bringing that information back to the task force.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. And then looking at that's thank you, Jesse, for going to this slide. The idea was, I know we've got a lot of projects completed, but specifically my area of focus right now is on those priority safety corridors. And then I think slide 10, you have the upcoming work, if you wanted to skip to that real quick. Obviously a number of projects as well underway. And as you stated, certainly the quick build coming online much more quickly. That's hence the name, and it's focused in those areas, but the projects themselves, more permanent projects, take a lot longer. That 12 to 18 months, I understand the need to be able to get some real data after a project comes in. But I do think that it's important for us to know sooner than later whether or not these investments of quick builds and the actual projects, specifically again in these priority safety corridors, if they're working or not. And in that way we can retool if we need to. And so I'd like to have some check-in if we can, and we don't need to go out there and gather any other data besides just the KSI info that we get anyways. And in my mind, I'd like to compare that information with the work that we've done in these corridors to understand, are we still seeing high numbers of KSIs in some of these priority safety corridors where we have already made an investment? And did it come, did they happen after, before? And I think we can do that analysis our own before necessarily the traditional 12 to 18 months of looking back on that project. So I'd like to do that through the task force, and I imagine this committee would appreciate hearing the updates on that as well as the information comes in. I'd like to be able to say definitively, right, that the investments that we're making are making a difference, and then show that through the data. But if they aren't, I'd like to know that sooner than later, so then that way we can understand, hey, are these quick builds, are they just not working right the way that we thought, or are some of these project improvements, are they not necessarily working the way that we thought or way that we had hoped they would? And then that way we can retool what we're doing with the next projects down the line, rather than just continue to move full steam ahead on these projects, assuming that they're going to work. That's just certainly my interest, and through the task force, I think we can make some of those requests, but I wanted to be able to get that here to staff now. And again, appreciate the work. I appreciate this update from the state on an opportunity on being able to adjust speed limit, Assembly Bill 43. But I know that was just signed, and that's going to take some time, as was stated. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity, as we know, the continued trend of speeding being really the highest factor. And if we can do more about that, obviously that's a tremendous help for us as a tool here locally. I don't have any other questions. Appreciate the staff update, and I'll make a motion to approve the status report.
Second.
Councilmember Foley.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Perales, for your comments. I had several of the same thoughts, particularly about the quick builds. Are they working? And getting an update as to whether they are will be really helpful. So I look forward to having that information. Can we go back to slide 5? I'm alarmed, and I'm really alarmed by this number that it continues up. And I know that speed is a big factor. Everywhere we go, people are driving way over the speed limit, and it's dangerous, and it's killing people and injuring people. Can you tell me, Jesse, of the 32 fatalities that we've had in the dark hours, do we know what number of those were homeless, or in general, what of these fatalities, how many were unhoused? Do we have a read on that?
We do have a read on that, although I don't know that I have that number right this second. But I can tell you that through working on the Vision Zero task force, we have engaged our partner on that data point more often. They are the county medical examiner coroner. We had previously been working with them on an annual basis, where we would basically get in contact with them in January and ask about the previous year. But now, after what happened on Monterey Road, we got in contact with them like 2 extra times, I believe, so far this year. So I'd have to look through old emails to tell you what our number is as of that point, but we don't have the number updated to this moment.
And what can we do? I'm being on the Vision Zero task force, I know that number is disproportionate to the general population. So what can we do to educate the unhoused about pedestrian safety to be safe on the roads? And then what can we do to make our streets safer in the dark areas? We've got the rains coming, it's darker outside. Last night was Halloween. I live on an intersection with a four-way stop, and people were flying through it in a residential neighborhood where there's lots of kids walking around. So I'm worried that we're going to see a lot of injuries that have occurred from last night, or let's hope not any fatalities, but people are driving so recklessly all over the place. And it's not, we're not able to slow any traffic down at this point.
I'd say the most general answer is that roadway redesign has been proven effective in other cities. And there's, obviously we do roadway redesign here, but I think the sort of work that's discussed in our various programs, a lot more could be done. This is a big city though, and I think the typical issue that we face is just, there are a lot of streets here and we're not a huge government. So, the amount of stuff that we can get to in a year, for example, is not huge. But we do a lot of things. We had some slides in this presentation. Obviously if we had 200 projects last year and 200 projects next year, we're obviously doing a lot of work. Nonetheless, we are a large city. So you asked about the dark hours. And you asked specifically about what we could do to educate unhoused people about safety in the dark hours. So when you said that, I just slightly moved away from this image behind me that says, "Look out when it's dark out," which is a campaign that we created in-house last year, and that we're thinking about being the basis for an outreach flyer that we are going to be distributing to unhoused people around Monterey and Curtin-Tully. Although we've talked to the housing department because they have done outreach to the unhoused population, and they would like us to make it clearer than that. So for example, if we made a version of this poster that says specifically use signalized crosswalks, that is something that we're considering doing. And that is one of our tasks that is in the rules memo that follows the fatalities there.
What if we, just thinking out of the box, bicyclists have these flashing lights that they can put on their bikes. What if we purchased them and handed them out when we go to the encampments? Then at least they have a light that is flashing as they're walking around. I mean, that would be good for everybody, but in the dark, I feel we're going to see more unhoused wandering around than not, but I could be wrong about that.
We do buy those and we do distribute them, but we could consider distributing them directly to that population in this case. We're trying to look for things that we can use in that location, but also use in other future locations. So we have been thinking about reflective things. For example, one of the complicated things in that is talking to people who do that type of outreach already and trying to ask them what they think people would keep. And sometimes the things that we want to give them are not the things they would keep, but that one does seem, fairly promising as they go. So we could, distribute those.
That's a good point. We may pass them out and that may not be something they want to utilize, and the advocates may know. They probably know certainly much better than I do. Can you give me an update? I saw Hillsdale on your to come. I thought it was happening right now, where one lane is being removed on either direction, on both directions, and that would slow down the traffic on Hillsdale substantially, and include the quick build of the bike lanes and center divide and all that. But I understand it's pushed back. Can you tell me why and when it might be implemented?
Lam, are you able to?
Sure, I can provide that update. Due to winter suspension, basically, due to the weather, they plan to implement the project implement the pavement project next spring. So our The striping work and the quick build improvements will come later in the spring of 2022.
Okay, so it's weather related. Okay. One other question I had, thank you, Lam. Jesse, is about AB 43. You mentioned that's a good thing, but you mentioned that it's only in business activities districts currently. I'm not sure what that means. So is that like Lincoln Avenue, that we could slow down traffic on Lincoln Avenue? Not suggesting we should, but just knowing there's a lot of foot traffic on Lincoln Avenue. Is that one area, or those are the kind of business districts that we can do something now?
In a word, yes. We have a map of business activity districts in the city of San Jose, and yes, Lincoln Avenue is one of them. And so we're basically looking at the map where they intersect, where the business activity maps over streets that are continuous. So it would make more sense, for example, to have a main street through a business activity district than a side street. So that's where we got the preliminary number of 8 miles of roadways that pass through those business activity districts. 2 miles are Vision Zero priority safety corridors. So that's basically, we're at the point now where we've analyzed what those streets are, but we haven't brought them forth yet. So that may be the next step.
And then as far as future implications or applications of AB 43, when might we see recommendations from you on how and where we can reduce speed? I'm thinking of streets like Hoosier in District 9, where we've already narrowed it down to 1 lane in either directions, but there was a fatality not long ago. And about a month after that, there was an injury accident in the same area. So it seems that being able to have some flexibility and slowing down on that street and others, that's just one I'm very familiar with because of my district. How or when will you be coming back to us with a recommendation on how we might be able to lower speed limits in other areas of the city?
I think in the specific part of the question about the business activity district streets, that seems like something we could do fairly soon. At least it's something that we're discussing internally. But on the subject of a more specific street, which is one we're also discussing internally, that's a little more specific to the people working on that project. So I don't know when they intend to come back. Lam may have a better idea on that one.
Hi, this is Lam Cruz speaking. So just to clarify on that piece, that's the piece where on Jesse's slide where implementation, we would have to wait for the county to develop an online tool to ensure that we provide access for those who want to contest moving violations. So that is one of the criteria before we can establish that part of the process.
So do we have any idea from the county when they might implement that or take that up for implementation? It sounds like a long process.
I know that they're required to do it by June of 2024, but I don't know exactly where they are in the process, and it's something that we could coordinate and find out.
Okay. So sadly, we're a long ways away from doing anything because it has to do with enforcement and then contesting a ticket if a violator receives one. Is that right? Or that's
yes,
that's true regarding AB 43. I mean, anything that's a street redesign that's not about lowering the speed limit is right. You just follow the existing timelines that exist now for any other project.
Right, and I'm looking at lowering the speed as a way to force drivers to drive slower. So the AB 43 is a great tool, but it sounds like there's going to be several years that it will take us, or a few years before we can actually implement it fully. So I look forward to being able to implement it fully. I just want to make a comment. One of the callers talked about manipulation of data. And I just have to defend that statement. That makes me very frustrated that people think we would manipulate the data in a way that might harm our pedestrians. I think as a city, we work really hard to keep our pedestrians safe, and to allege that we're manipulating the data just isn't accurate, and I really couldn't let that statement stand. And with that, I will move on and conclude my comments, but I really appreciate this Vision Zero report, and anyone who wants more information, please come to the next Vision Zero task force, which is coming up, where we discuss these details in great depth. But thank you, Jesse and Lamb, for your work thus far, and I look forward to more information and continuing to work together to make our streets safe. Thank you.
Just a follow comment is just
yes,
because
sir.
I did just two things because I didn't say it in this presentation. One is that all of our slides have our website on the bottom left, which is visionzerosj.org. And on there's a map for anyone who's not familiar with our data. They can go to the Maps and Data tab, and it shows the Priority Safety Corridor map. And also there's a tool where anyone can look up any street in San Jose and look at all of the crashes, injuries that have occurred there, and really just search the data themselves. So in case people are watching this or not aware of that, I think it's great to know about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Hi, this is Lam again. Just wanted to clarify, it's the state judicial county that's supposed to make the online tool for us. And another note to your comment on Camden and Cruiser, there are other tools in the toolkit to make improvements, and we are working with your staff to make improvements to that intersection right now.
Yes, thank you. I know you are. We're trying to, with you and my staff, we're working hard to try and figure out the best way to do that. One of those tools was slowing the speed down, but I'm not sure we can do that yet. But there are other ways we can force the street to slow down, narrowing the street, that sort of thing. So thank you for working with my staff on that. It's been a difficult year in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Esparza.
Thanks, Madam Chair. First off, I saw the photos of Center in the presentation, and I really wanted to thank Lamb and Jesse and Lily and everybody on the team for all their hard work on Center. We had some horrible accidents, and the team really stepped up. And while the Vision Zero for all of Center is a much bigger project, they moved on some quick build outs to make it safer. And so I just wanted to say a big thank you to that. I also had a comment on the Center Road. In the report, it does talk about, oh my God, thrown out of here. Sorry, hold on. I'm having technical issues. So the report mentions Center Road and all the things that came out from the community meetings, and that the number one thing that was actually requested by residents, particularly on the southern half of Center, was more lighting. And it's something that has emerged actually close to Story Road as well, that folks have asked for more lighting. When we look at the slide that has the dark hours, that we had 68% of fatalities this year in dark hours, why do you think that is? I know we just had a conversation about Kirtner and Monterey, but are we looking at the corridors in terms of Kirtner and Monterey is a little bit of a monster in terms of people possibly driving under the influence late at night, right? But there are other streets where it's just frankly hard to see. Are we capturing our ability to use lighting? Are we delving deeper into the dark hours issue?
We have not done that much yet. And I would say that we, obviously we do have our street light team, and they probably do have their metric for, their standard of lightness on all roads. I would say I'm very intrigued by that number, and also that we're sort of aware that, for example, this time of year that we're entering right now, November to March, we typically see a spike in fatalities due to more darkness overlapping with commute hours. And so we do typically have a campaign that we run at this time of year that last year we called Look Out When It's Dark Out. But I think that it's like many of the areas that we turn up in these analyses. I don't want to say that we've done all that we can do to analyze and respond. I think that we, I'm actually glad that we've identified that that's an area that we really should be looking into more, even though we have looked into it before. So I'm interested to see what we could do. We are doing a LED upgrade, but Lam, are you familiar with information about the LED upgrade?
So I know that the whole streetlight LED upgrade, they're doing it citywide. In terms of, where they are exactly on the process, I would need to follow up. But to your question or to your comment on the Center Road feedback about streetlight upgrades or, lack of lighting, we did, as part of that project, implement, I want to say, maybe 1 or 2 dozen streetlights by brightening it as part of that project. So we did hear, the feedback from the community. We went back and then we did some analysis and brightened up those specific streetlights.
And you did, and thank you for doing that.
And then the citywide streetlights will all be upgraded early next year.
And are we prioritizing the Vision Zero corridors for that?
I believe yes. The Center Road team is watching this meeting and said that there were 23 LED replacements done on Center Road.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to, Councilmember Foley asked a lot of really good questions, and some of those were questions that I was going to ask around homelessness. Are we also reaching out? I will say for Center, Tully, Monterey, Story, some of the feedback I'm getting on the calls for service, the 911 calls, or when fire goes out onto medical calls, we indicate that there's potential to have some behavioral health issues as well at night. Are we coordinating with the county's behavioral health team to do outreach? Particularly at night, or about, hey, we've got folks ODing at night, and along some major corridors. Are we doing any outreach to try and bring that number down? And I realize that doesn't impact all the corridors. I'm just talking about sort of certain corridors that I'm aware of where that's an issue.
So after the Monterey Kirtner Tully fatalities, we've been in contact with more partner departments. So we talked to housing, and they have, I understand, 2 vendors they work with. And then we asked them about this. It was new for us to learn about how the county has additional vendors, and the county vendors are the ones that do the behavioral health work. And so we have yet to talk to that department directly. So I don't know that I can answer that question, but I'm happy that through the work that we've done around Monterey and Kirtner-Tully, I'm glad that we've learned about the other vendors and about the county department that administers those services. So I think there's more potential to get in touch with them directly to answer that question.
Thank you. And it also might be helpful to connect with the fire department just to have some conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I had another question on the outside of crosswalks issues. Why do we think that is? I mean, is it, homeless encampments? Is it COVID where just, the streets were empty for so long and people got used to it? Are we looking at that, and also looking at the time of day in terms of that as well?
I have some speculative answers to this one. I mean, they're all sort of a little academic, but we do want to know more as a quick answer. But within the world of the pedestrian safety plan that we're just originating now, and we're going to bring on a consultant, and this is one of the areas that we really want them to look into. There's a big range here between sort of right outside the crosswalk or sort of near to an existing crosswalk versus, really, really far from a signalized crosswalk. Both of those situations exist on a lot of our priority safety corridors. And I mean, a lot of the priority safety corridors are big, wide, fast streets that were really designed for cars. So as the land use on them changes, which is we see a lot of right now around the city, Monterey Road is a great example. Actually, you can tell when you look at it on satellite Google Maps that it used to be very industrial. And then if you look, for example, at Monterey Kirtner-Tully, you have a mall on the west and you have dense housing on the east. And so there have not been, for example, many more signalized crossings added at the same time as we, build those buildings. So how then do you sort of correct for that? And so that's one of the big questions that we really want the consultant to help us answer. Like how, if we want to, for example, build new signalized intersections in those areas between existing signalized intersections, how would they propose that we prioritize them and also afford them? So I think that it's a really good, big question, and we really want to answer it within the realm of that plan that we're just about to begin now.
Okay. Thank you, because I think time of day is really important, and I'll, what was it, Christmas 2019, we had a horrible fatality that was sort of at the end of the day. So the sun was at just a weird angle, right? And then, there are apartment buildings and county buildings where you have a lot of people taking the bus and then crossing the street, and people living in the apartments crossing the street to take a bus, right? So that is designed sort of where you're definitely going to have, and that's where you put in the build outs, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you. And so that sort of generates some activity, whereas Kirtner and Monterey, there's, again, it's a monster intersection, right? You sort of have everything under the sun, but it's a main artery at night. It's a main artery if you've been out clubbing and you're going home now. It's a main artery if you're a distribution center and you've got trucks coming out. So it's a little bit of a different flavor. So that's something I'm interested in getting some more information on. You also touched on something I wanted to bring up, which is development next to industrial areas. development on Monterey predates me, but it's a very active industrial area, and it's growing. And in fact, I had a question about Little Orchard Barnard being designated one of the 5. I'm not aware of PD giving that information. I'm not aware of a high number of like crashes in that intersection. I will say that it is right next to an Amazon hub, right? So there's a high volume of those Amazon van truck things in and out all the time. Yes, there's a mobile home park, but you're not going to see residents crossing that street because there's a lot of other stuff going on there too. So I just wanted to bring up the issue of industrial areas and the need for us to coordinate with them on Vision Zero. How are we working? Like, we've got some major distribution hubs in this area, in some of our Vision Zero areas. It includes Kirtner Monterey, although I think that was kind of its own sort of thing. But there are these other areas where you've got high volume of trucks going through it. Are we working with those industrial businesses? And frankly, I'll also say, and you touched on this in the report, but you know, we really need to choose, right? Or is an area going to be industrial, or is it going to be housing, or what? But it's, I think, unsafe to put certain activities in high volume industrial areas. So that was the other question. Are we reaching out to any of our industrial partners?
A quick response, I guess, is that urban freight is a policy area within transportation that we haven't done tons with yet. But there is someone in the DOT planning side who is working on that area, who recently joined the department within the last year. And so I've had a little bit of conversations with her. There are cities that work on that area. We haven't done much there yet. But I do, you know, insofar as being the Vision Zero manager, attend, you know, basically sort of what's going on in the Vision Zero world right now. And that topic is addressed. So I am aware of some things we could do regards to truck design, for example. Some cities actually have a big fleet of their own where they adopt different types of truck designs, and the potential to do outreach with big industrial you know, uses in the city is something we could do. I don't know how actively that's done in other cities, but I think it's a good idea. So I would say that that's sort of an emerging side of Vision Zero, but it's a good idea. The other thing that you touched on is just the changing land use. I don't know necessarily that those things all can't coexist, but they, you know, just sort of acknowledging that the land use is changing and what the land use changing means for the roads is, I think, a useful thing to do. So, you know, particularly in this point about the way that our roads were designed and the fact that most of our traffic fatalities are people killed while walking is a useful thing to acknowledge, you know. So in the service of the greater goal of bringing down traffic fatalities, you know, we need more pedestrian safety infrastructure to work on that. And there's a lot of, you know, potential to add that. So I think the difficulty, though, is that a lot of it can be quite expensive. So, for example, the quick build work that we do now is on the more affordable end of the range, whereas, for example, adding more signalized crosswalks is more expensive. So, coming up with the strategy to do that is something that I think is really important for the future of our development of the Vision Zero plan here in San Jose.
And have we, so I'll also just kind of share that at this point, I think, you know, the county has developments and Measure A developments and other things that they might do in other parts of the city that, you know, and with all the state bills and everything, this might be something that we share with them in terms of the Vision Zero corridors so that potentially that could be mitigated by development a little bit more. And I'm just, again, basing that on my experience in District 7. I know not every district is like that by any means, but there's just a lot of development that had been put in after the fact where we just didn't have any mitigation. So, all right, with that, I'll just, I'll stop right there. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Davis had to leave, so we'll move to a vote because we have a motion and second on this item.
Foley,
Aye.
Corrales,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
and Cohen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're on to open forum. Caller 0012.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we can.
Okay. Hey, I love the ideas and a lot of good ideas going on. Well, I just had a thought. Why don't we focus on like inspiring the people, you know, to like maybe care, to slow down, you know, maybe like we could have maybe like a song or something on the radio or something. If we had local artists or something, you know, try to inspire people to care about, like, you know, slowing down. I think it would do a lot of good. I know that David Hume talked about reasoning only ever always being slave to the passions. You know, we can know all the data we want, you know, but we won't really do anything about it unless we really care, you know. And I think that that would be a really powerful thing. Really. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. All right, Blair.
Hi, Blair here. Thanks for the words of that previous caller. It's nice to hear. I hope we can return sometime. I guess I got to go with my heavy first. And, to respond a bit to Councilperson Foley, who just spoke, it was my understanding that it's been kind of a hard-fought debate about how to decide the future of KSI statistics over the past few years. They may be getting over a hump and finding a good direction at this time. I'm sorry I didn't report that better. But I think I'm fairly accurate in what I've been describing, and that needs to be discussed and open. It needs to be open. We can't just simply blanket and brush it under the rug. But I thank you for the attempts. I will try my best towards feel-good notions as well, as much as we can. But we have to note things sometimes and be open how to talk about things too. Sorry for the trouble. I'll try to speak on a few items I want to talk about at this time at open forum. Mask use is important. The COVID may be rising in England and in Russia at this time. So we have to continue the mask use ideas. I had a few other items. Oh, I wanted to thank Tessa. The way she described how she used the name, described the name Joe Roy, her own words to describe how she felt it sounded like were really interesting, I thought. And I didn't want to at all hurt her interpretation of his name that I thought was more interesting than mine in interpretations. What else? There's a real important city charter meeting tonight. It's going to talk about study session issues, a wide range of issues that I think can be helpful in understanding and putting into frame what we're working towards to our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Andrew Boone.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cohen. This is Andrew Boone, and I'd like to thank the city for hosting a second Viva Calle event this November 7th. I mean, second this year. I believe before this year, it's only been one one Viva Calle per year. This is where a large route, 5 or 6 miles of streets are closed to car traffic so that people can use the streets for walking, bicycling, skating, dancing, enjoying life. And I went to the Viva Calle event 2 months, I think it was a couple of months ago, and it was fantastic. I was blown away about how many people were out there, the crowds. And this is very important. I hope that the city will someday hold even more than 2 events per year. San Francisco has been hosting 8 open street events, their equivalent of Viva Calle, since they started about 10 years ago until the pandemic. The Viva Calle allows people to see an alternative for the future of the streets. It allows us to see that the streets don't just have to be for cars. We have a solution here. We can make streets not just death, traffic, sewer, just death zones, but we can make them for people, for a future that we need to build. And it shouldn't just be for 5 hours on one day that streets are closed to cars. This is the way some of our streets should be all the time. There need to be streets, at least in downtown San Jose, that are car-free streets. Almost every major European city has it as a complete downtown core, a network of streets that are car-free. San Jose needs to take the vision, take the steps to make that a reality here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Tessa.
Thank you, Vice Chair David Cohn, doing a good job. Yeah, well, I was talking to my husband. Well, I was very inspired that Councilwoman Pam Foley's compassion towards her fellow human being in regards to the homeless people being primarily on our streets. Yes, that's very true. They're the only ones that walk down my block. Most of the time I say, hi, how are you? Are you homeless? I mean, yes, I'm homeless, and so I'm not saying all the people that walk on my block, but a lot of people when I'm out are homeless because they're the ones that aren't in the cars destroying our planet, and so this is, the reality. But I appreciated that Pam Foley was saying that we needed to give them some device so that they could be more well lit. And you always come up with some battery oriented thing, but that's not really sustainable and something that can last forever because they don't. And so my husband's idea was, and I thought was a good idea, was vests. If we got them, those great vests that, people wear that for their bicycles or workers, and that they have pockets. I mean, they're really a nice addition to your going out on the street because they have pockets. And so that seemed like a great idea to give everyone vests. Anyway, the homeless people. And so, and that was one idea. And then, what Andrew was talking about, yes, we need car-free downtown. And I was talking to my girlfriend, Catherine Mathewson, who actually talked at the Charter Review Commission. And she at first didn't go for it. But then when we were talking about it, she says in Singapore, they actually do that. And they only allow the trucks in. Hopefully they'll become electrified. And our buses hopefully come electrified. And then, we just get rid of our car traffic. And that's how they do it in Singapore. So we could do that with the Google Village and the downtown. I think would really improve downtown. And so we should really look at that car.
All right, well, that comes back to council. Thank you everyone for a great meeting. And that concludes our Transportation Environment Committee meeting for November.